Hi guys, welcome to Politics in Hands. Thank you so much for clicking on today's video, and we're going to do another Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump prediction. A lot has happened since the last time I made one of these predictions. We've had a vice presidential pick, Tim Walz, the token white dude, as I said in my last prediction. We've also had a new emergence of what seems to be a potential new pandemic, the monkeypox, and we're going to go into how this will affect the 2024 presidential election between Trump and Harris. But before I do that, please like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the post notification bell. Without further ado, we're going to get started here. So first of all, we're going to fill in all the safe Republican states. You've got the Great Plains states, North and South Dakota, Nebraska. Yes, Texas is going safe. Ohio and Iowa are no longer swing states. You've got the Deep South. Florida is going safe. Alaska, Maine's 2nd Congressional District, Nebraska at large. And next, we're going to focus on the safe blue states, the states that Kamala Harris will win by over 10 points. Yes, you have the entire West Coast, although I do think it'll get closer. You've got the entire Eastern Seaboard, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New York, Illinois, and I think New York will get closer ultimately, but it'll still be an over 10-point win for Kamala Harris. You have Maine's 1st Congressional District and the state of Colorado. And as you can see, the map is getting a whole lot more filled in, and there's not a lot of electoral votes left for either candidate. So without further ado, now what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the likely Republican states, the states that will go to Trump by about 5 to 7 points. And the first state that I think will go to Trump by over 5 points will probably be the state of North Carolina. And the reason why I say this is you look at what's going on there, you look at the trends, you look at how unpopular their governor is. The polling suggests that Trump is going to win the state by over 3 points. And in one of my previous videos, I talked about how the polling actually underestimates Republicans in the state of North Carolina. And yeah, Donald Trump is looking very good there electorally. He's definitely going to get back those 16 electoral votes for sure, which is good because Trump's path to victory is only possible through the state of North Carolina. He needs that state to win. And on this map, I do think that is the only likely state for Trump and the Republicans. And next, we're going to do the likely Democrat states, the states that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are going to win by over 5 points, 5 to 7 points respectively. I think we should begin with Minnesota because in my previous predictions, I've talked about how Minnesota could and does have the potential to go Republican at a presidential level. And even though it hasn't since 1976, unfortunately, because Kamala has chosen Tim Walz, I do believe that Minnesota is probably no longer in play for the Republicans. Now that could change as things get closer. You could see the election shift in favor of Donald Trump in the state of Minnesota. It's a very elastic state, but it's also a very weird state because the margin that Democrats win by shifts constantly. In 2016, Trump almost won it by 1.5. In 2020, Biden won it by like 8 points, and that was when the Twin Cities of Minneapolis were pretty much burned to the ground. So the state of Minnesota is very hard to predict. Reagan didn't win it in 1984. He lost it by, I think, 4,000 or 6,000 votes statewide. So Minnesota will probably be won by Kamala and Tim Walz by about 6 points. It'll be a bit closer than it was in 2020, but the Democrats will hold on to it. You've got the Iron Range, you've got the Twin Cities pushing the state into the Democrat column. The next state that I believe will be likely Democrat would be the state of New Mexico. And New Mexico is a state that should be doing better in terms of the Republican count, but because of the culture, you've got Santa Fe, you've got Albuquerque that are pushing the state into the Democrat column. It used to be a swing state in the 2000s. Bush barely won it both times around, and I do think that Trump will do better in the state of New Mexico, but ultimately I don't think he'll be able to pull it off. As of right now, that could change as things get closer. Maybe there'll be some October surprise, but New Mexico will go into the Democrat column probably by about 5 to 5.5 points. It'll be closer than the 10-point win Biden had back in 2020. A lot closer, but he won't win it. And looking at the map, I think the next likely Democrat state or electoral vote would be Maine at large. And Maine at large is a derivative of the Portland metro area in southern Maine. And it's not really a big city, but it is a very Democrat-leaning area in the state of Maine, and that ultimately does push it over into the Democrat column. I think that Kamala and Tim Walz probably win Maine at large by about 7 points, but then Maine's 2nd Congressional District is going to Trump by over 20 points easily. And that's it for the likely states, folks. And next, I think we should talk about the lean states that will go to Donald Trump, the lean Republican states, any state that votes for Donald Trump by over 2 points, 2 to 5 points. The lean states. And as you can see, we're pretty much at the 2020 map in terms of swing states. And I think the first lean state for Donald Trump would be the state of Georgia. This will be the first flip of the night. And I think Donald Trump wins Georgia by about 2.5%. Kamala is doing good in the polling right now, but the polling doesn't cover the full story. I know a lot of people are panicking about Kamala Harris and if she's going to do good in the state of Georgia, if she's even going to win the election, because she seems to have erased Donald Trump's lead. And to that I say, just look at 2016 and 2020, in 2016 where Clinton was leading Trump by 8 points during the same time, or in 2020 where Biden was leading by 10, and the polling just, it doesn't tell the full story, and it doesn't gauge the unlikely voters, the people who don't really turn out except for Donald Trump. The polling fails to capture those people. So I think Donald Trump wins the state of Georgia by about 2.1%. It'll be closer, much closer than it was in 2016, obviously, because the state is trending very far to the left. You have the Atlanta area that's growing a lot, and Donald Trump will win it by a bigger margin than it was won by Biden in 2020. I think Biden winning the state of Georgia was just a fluke. If Kamala wins the popular vote by 2 points, then Georgia will vote to the right by 2% of the nation. So I honestly think that's it for the lean Republican states at this time. And I think now we need to focus on the lean Democrat states, which would be the state of Virginia. And you've got Governor Glenn Youngkin there, who's doing a great job, and he's bringing back paper ballots in the state of Virginia, something we haven't seen for a long time as calls for election integrity increase. And I think this is a really good thing, but I don't think that Donald Trump will win the state of Virginia. He was leading the aggregate, and he was leading the polls against Biden in the state of Virginia before he dropped out. And I do think it's possible that it is winnable for Republicans in the future, but as of right now, I don't really see Trump winning the state of Virginia because there is a Democrat surge, or at least a purported one. And while I don't think that's the case, it is possible that she could be surging with more liberal voters moving to her column. But the state of Virginia, again, you have the northern metro area, the DC area, that really dictates how the state will vote as a whole, because the rest of Virginia is ruby red. It's a very red state, very conservative state. You've just got the northern part, the DC area, that has a lot of government workers, and that really pushes the state into the Democrat column. So Virginia, I would say, goes to Kamala by about 3%, maybe 3.5 percentage points. And she's not an electoral juggernaut. I'll make a video on that at some point. But anyways, the next state that will go lean Democrat would be the state of New Hampshire. And I would almost put this in the tilt column. I think Kamala wins it by 2.5 to 3%. You do have a lot of Bostoners who've moved up to New Hampshire. However, the thing with the state of New Hampshire is it hates incumbents. It always votes against the incumbent party. We saw this in 2016. Donald Trump only lost the state of New Hampshire by 3,000 votes. Biden won it by 8. In 2012, Obama didn't do as good as he did in 2008. Bush won it in the year 2000, but he lost it in 2004. So New Hampshire is an interesting state, but it will probably vote for Kamala by 3%, 3 to 4%. And lastly, the last electoral vote that would go lean for Kamala is Nebraska's 2nd congressional district. Don Bacon has held on in this area, but unfortunately, Nebraska's 2nd congressional district is more left-leaning. You have redistricting there, and it's taken up a lot of the metro areas. So I do think that Nebraska's 2nd will go for Kamala. And Republicans had the opportunity to give Nebraska's 2nd congressional district and just make it as a part of Nebraska as a whole. But unfortunately, they were incompetent and they couldn't do that. So now I think we're going to have Nebraska's 2nd go for Kamala by probably 3%. Biden won it by, I think, 6 or 7. It'll get closer because Kamala doesn't have that Biden appeal. And now we're left with the true battleground states that will decide the election. The tilt states and the states that will be decided by, I believe, under 1% to 1.5%, the true swing states in this election. And I think the first state that we can confidently say will vote for Donald Trump in this election would be the state of Nevada, because Nevada is one of those states that, I made a video on this, the Republicans are doing very good in the state of Nevada. They're getting a lot of voter registration. They're outnumbering the Democrats by a significant margin. They've cleared the voting rolls, which has significantly diminished the Democrats' lead in the state of Nevada, making it a true battleground and a true toss-up. Trump's no tax on tips, I think, will ultimately deliver the state of Nevada into his column. It has been a white whale for Republicans, but this time around, I do believe he'll pull off the state of Nevada. He'll win it by probably 0.5% to 1%, and it'll be one of the closest states in this race. So Donald Trump is at 257 electoral votes. He needs to pull off either Pennsylvania or Arizona and Wisconsin to win this election. Anyways, that would be the first tilt state in Donald Trump's column. And I think ultimately the second tilt state is going to be the state of Wisconsin, because Wisconsin is a state that's very favorable to Republicans demographically. And although it's been a Democrat bastion for many years now, Wisconsin is becoming more right. It's trending more Republican. The Badger State has been long sought by the Republican Party, and it voted for Trump in 2016 for the first time, and I think ultimately it will vote for Donald Trump in 2024 once again, and Kamala Harris will lose the state by 1%. It'll be a larger margin than in previous years, but it'll still be relatively close, and Donald Trump just needs one more state to win now. And I do think ultimately he will pull off the state of Pennsylvania. Donald Trump will win the state of Pennsylvania probably by about 0.5%. He'll do better in the Erie area and the rural part of the state. That will significantly help him, put him over the edge. He'll have to do slightly better with turnout in the Philly and Pittsburgh areas. He doesn't have to worry about the Scranton Joe appeal that Biden may have had. And ultimately, I do see Donald Trump taking back the state of Pennsylvania, which would put him over the edge. That is the tipping point state. It has been the last 2 elections. He doesn't even need Wisconsin or Nevada if he just takes Pennsylvania and Georgia. But now we're also going to look at the last 2 states on the map, which in my opinion will be the closest states, the state of Michigan and the state of Arizona. So first of all, the state of Michigan. This is a state that Trump won back in 2016, and he won it by the slimmest of margins. He won it by 10,000 votes. It was one of the closest margins ever, certainly in the state of Michigan, but the second closest state in 2016. But in 2020, Biden came along and he won it by a lean margin. And we know this is a fact, but Michigan is the bluest of the Rust Belt trio. Pennsylvania is that true battleground state, and then Wisconsin is the most right-leaning of the Rust Belt trio. And I do think that Donald Trump can win Michigan if he tries to, if he really campaigns for it. But as of right now, I do think that Kamala Harris barely pull off the state of Michigan. It'll be within 10,000 votes. Either way, it'll be extremely narrow because the state is very close as it is, and Trump is liked there. Kamala has a lot of support in the Detroit area. It's all going to come out to turn out. And folks, that leaves us lastly with the state of Arizona. Arizona is that true battleground state, and I predict it's going to be the closest state this election cycle. It's going to be probably under 5,000 votes or 10,000 votes for either party. And, you know, Republicans should be doing good in the state of Arizona. We have a lot of electoral advantages. We have more registered Republicans than not. And Donald Trump almost won the state back in 2020. He lost it by only 10,000 votes. An extremely narrow margin for Biden is what he won it by. So Arizona is not lost for the Republicans, despite what we saw in the Senate election and in other elections, the gubernatorial election where Kerry Lake barely lost it by less than 0.5%. I do think Arizona is one of those battleground states that Trump can pull off. Kamala can also pull it off too. And the reason why I say this is there is split ticket voting, which means that you can vote for one party but then vote down ballot for different parties. So you could vote Democrat at the top and Republican down ballot, or vice versa. Ultimately, the state of Arizona is going to take a few days to be called, and I do think that Donald Trump will make a last stand in the state of Arizona. He will barely win it. If he wins it, it'll be by 5,000 votes. It'll be extremely close, but Donald Trump will win the state of Arizona, giving him those crucial electoral votes. And that's it for this prediction, guys. Donald Trump wins the election, 297 to Kamala Harris's 241 electoral votes, giving him 4 more years in the White House. If you like this content, please like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the post notification bells. Comment down below what else you'd like to see. And until next time, thank you guys for watching.